Thanks for coming down, Shauna.
Thank you for inviting me.
How was your journey?
Interesting.
You came from a very long way away.
All the way in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
For the viewers and like for people watching the interview, how would you describe yourself? Just give a little backstory on who you are.
My name is Shauna. I am originally from Jamaica, Jamaican born,
Yeah.
raised in Sheffield. So I'm a
Yeah.
northern lass, as they would say. And currently living in Birmingham, well, outskirts of Birmingham.
Yeah.
I've been living there for maybe 13 years now, 13 to 14 years. So I went down there to study and stayed there, as you do.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that's me. As a profession, I originally started as a college lecturer, specialising in politics and sociology. That was kind of my area, the social sciences, and research as well, heavily in research. I currently work at a school, again, teaching sociology, but this time with psychology rather than the politics. And yeah, that's what I do. I am Seventh-day Adventist, Christian. I've been an Adventist all my life. I was probably more Adventist by tradition for the first maybe 19, 20 years of my life. And then the rest of the years, I kind of found my own feet, found Christ for myself, understood why I was this Adventist. And I suppose that forms a lot of my identity as well.
Okay, cool.
So yeah.
Does that help you form the stuff for your Diamond Box project?
Definitely. I would say the whole coming from a Caribbean background, living in Britain, being a Christian, that with the whole Diamond Box project thing, it was more, I'm coming from a certain generation. I'm born in the 80s, you know, we grew up through the 90s. I'm in my 30s now. And for me, it was sort of like, as a woman, as a black woman growing up, there were just a lot of things that were said to us out of tradition, like women do this and women do that. And it was said by women who don't currently occupy the same space as me.
Yeah.
So growing up, there was a lot of, not misinformation, but misguided information. And the whole point of the Diamond Box project was for me just to kind of share with possibly my younger self things that I wish I could have heard when I was a little bit younger, type of thing.
What would be an example of that?
An example being possibly find yourself first, in terms of, I think, particularly growing up in the black community, again, being of a certain age, in the Christian community as well, if we're honest, there's an idea, like there's a tick box, isn't there? You do this, you go to university, you get married, and then you have children, tick, tick, tick. And there's not a lot of focus given on the you bit, like you go and you develop yourself as a person first before you get yourself into a relationship, before you get married, before you have children. It was more like, actually, now you've finished university, go and get married type of thing. And not a lot of, I don't know, a lot of guidance was given in, well, how do you find yourself and so on and so forth. So the Diamond Box project was kind of me trying to explain to my younger self, try and do these things first before, I mean, these tick box things, they are important milestones in your life, but there's stuff that goes in between that fills out those milestones. And that was kind of the whole point of the Diamond Box project.
With that, how old is the project now?
The project, I would say, is about 2 years old properly.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I sat down and I thought about this thing for a long time. I didn't.
Yeah.
I had a friend, one of my good friends, he's a web developer, and he basically just said to me, you know, I've created this WordPress account because you write and you write really well, and you're basically going to fill this WordPress account with information.
Yeah.
And that was basically it.
It's good to have a friend like that, though. Good to have good friends that will just push you to do what you need to do.
He just did it. And he was like, well, what do you want here? What do you want there? And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so now we're here 2 years on, really. Yeah.
Cool. So you've got your series, the Womanhood series?
Yeah.
The last post was The Silent Woman, I believe, And there was a quote that, I guess I get you to elaborate on then the quote and then obviously the whole Womanhood series and the whole and what the purpose of it is.
Yeah.
But the quote is, there is a purposefulness to her silence. Her aim is to allow its reverberating waves to penetrate your mind and draw out of it that you did or said wrong. So that was part of obviously a broader post, which I don't want to just say, take the quote and out of context. So in terms of the silent woman example, like for those people who are going to check out your page, what would you want them to get from that post?
I think with that post, it was more in terms of silence. Well, it was kind of a two-way thing where women use silence as a tool to get men to think about what they've done. That's what that quote was about. It was kind of like, if she's not talking, there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of words being said without being said. And it's actually the conversation you should be having with yourself, not with her. And you need to figure out, go back in your mind, all the conversations that you've had maybe in the last couple of months, last couple of weeks, and figure out what you've done wrong. And it's sort of a game that women sometimes play, whether it's a useful game or not, I'm not sure. But the other side of it was to point out that silence is not a good thing for us to use. We actually need to be grown and use our words and let people know what's going on, because it's almost this emotional, it's draining sometimes. But I am guilty of that, being younger. And again, this was something that we were told, if he's getting on your nerves, just shut him down, just be quiet. And I'm just thinking, well, how useful is that? So you grow up learning to be silent. And thinking that this is going to get a guy to do, and it doesn't. I think when you grow up, you have a conversation with each other. It might be, actually, I'm going to be silent for a little while because what I need to say, I don't really know how to formulate what I need to say, but we are going to have this discussion at some point, type of thing. So that's what that post was about, really.
Okay, cool. And then the overall womanhood series, I think I like what you've done with it and how you've sort of titled it and what you talk about in it. To also like get people into, I guess to discuss more from your perspective as well. What inspired that series? What would you want them to gain from that series?
The womanhood series kind of came out of having conversations with some of the young people at my church, a lot of my students, and I just thought I should catalogue these conversations because I'm sure that other people can benefit from it, and that's what I basically did with the series. As I think my initial starting point, again, I think I spoke about rights and responsibilities, where almost we were told being a woman and growing into womanhood is your right, but we weren't actually fully told what that responsibility looks like. So it was kind of me having these internal discussions with myself, but also discussions with a lot of the younger girls that are around me and kind of mentoring those girls, and then discussions with my girlfriends as well, and them mentoring me, and so on and so forth. So that's where a lot of the titles and the episodes came out of, really, out of the I think 2 series we've done with several different episodes.
So do you feel like womanhood has changed from the 90s to now, or like the early 2000s to now? Like, how do you feel like it's progressed or changed?
I think that on the surface, there is a surface level understanding that womanhood has progressed because women have these rights and they have those rights and they have these rights. But in my experience, we haven't progressed a long way at all, both from a structural level in terms of institutions, in terms of women in the world of work, in terms of women in education, so on and so forth, but also on a personal level, in terms of the way that as women we still conduct ourselves in a way that makes us look like we are weaker sometimes, because this is just a narrative that is in our heads. And even though everything around us has changed, for some strange reason, sometimes that narrative in our head still hasn't changed. So for me, there's progression on the surface, but deep down, I'm not sure how far we've come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's a personal journey for everyone then?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
But I also feel that there is a collective journey as well for women. I think that we live in a world where there aren't enough images of women. I suppose this was one of the main reasons for the Womanhood podcast as well. There's not a lot of images of women getting along with each other. Sorry. There's not a lot of that going on. And for me, a lot of the sitcoms, I remember watching The Desperate Housewives. And I was just like, I don't know how people sit and watch this, because it's just women constantly screaming at each other and And I just thought, I can't watch this. And then a lot of the sitcom series, just women always in this antagonistic relationship towards each other, and always in the center of it is a man. So we don't get along because we're fighting over the same man. And that kind of perpetuates certain narratives in women's heads. And I think this is why I say we haven't progressed a lot. And a lot of the stuff that I think I wrote something about Fighting Fair, where women will come up to me and tell me that they don't like another woman. And I'm like, but you don't know her. What don't you like about her? Oh, my spirit just don't catch. I'm like, what does that even mean? And other people have come up to me and like, after they've developed a relationship with me, like, oh, actually, you're quite cool. I'm like, well, wasn't I cool before? No, or you seemed a little bit this. And there's always this idea as women that we shouldn't get along. That's what's in our heads all the time. And I think the Diamond Box Project thing is about women saying, okay, we're going to get rid of all of that stuff and actually try and come together and discuss things as mature people, as people who want to build a future, a better legacy for our daughters, really. So, yeah.
How have you been able to incorporate your perspective as I guess you're first generation British, Caribbean?
Yeah.
How have you been able to incorporate that into what you do?
That's always at the forefront of what I do, even though I came over here at a very young age. I grew up in a very Caribbean home, single parent family, matriarchal, mom, older sister running the home, mom, older sister always pushing us to be better at this and do this and so on and so forth. So I think when I blog about stuff, when I kind of talk, do mentoring stuff or workshops, I'm doing it from that perspective where I'm trying to put into other women and have them put into me as well the things that were given to me as a Caribbean woman, as a black woman, as somebody who grew up in a home that was very black, as that, if that makes sense. And I'm not trying to lose that either, even though I am British as well, which is also part of my identity. And I don't think that the two have to exist separately. And I can't make them exist separately because they're both inside of me, if that makes sense.
Well, you've been brought up in the UK, so that's going to be part of that in you anyway. Exactly.
So, yeah, I think it definitely drives a lot of that. And it drives the way that I write as well. Yeah, so I think you'll hear it there, here and there. But, yeah, I am Caribbean and proud.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So
that's how it should be.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got 3 episodes on your SoundCloud for the podcast. Headscarf and Yard Clothes. I like that. I like the concept.
Yeah.
Relationship standards, masculinity and the silent treatment, I guess based off the womanhood blog. And to depend or not to defend. Now, the last one, to depend or not to defend, that's an interesting title.
Yeah.
What's that meant to be discussing?
That's kind of the second half of the discussion of episode 5, where we posed the question to 2 of the men that were on the podcast with us, whether or not black men have been strong enough in the defense of black women. And that was
kind of interesting debate, actually. I like that.
Yeah, and the reason why I did that was because I think there were just polar opposite opinions, where a lot of women that I spoke to, straight away when I asked them, no, they haven't. But when I asked the men, straight away, yes, we have. And what we kind of got to the bottom of was, particularly with the 2 guys that were on the podcast, black men seem to be able to defend women who they know. So if you listen, the guys say, yeah, of course we defend black women. I've always defended my mum and I've always defended my sister. But then when we ask them to think about outside of that concept, there's no experiences there. There's no experiences where you would ever see a black woman, apart from if, say, you're on the trains and you see a woman. But I think that those guys would just come to that person's defense anyway, because it's just a person who needs defending. But outside of that context, when you ask a lot of black men, they struggle, well, within my circles, this is me generalizing to my experience, they struggle to find examples of when they've defended a black woman, defended black women outside of...
What do you mean by defend?
I mean, not berate, because a lot of it's going to sound a little bit...
Let it fly.
a lot of the abuse and disrespect that I get as a black woman does not come from men outside of the community. They come from black men. It comes from black men. I am told by black men, you are this, you're that, you're X, you're Y and Z. Yeah? And it's very rare that even if a black man doesn't agree with what somebody else is saying about a black woman, they would actually openly say, no, actually, she is not this. Apart from liking a post and writing queen underneath, that's it. But really and truly, sorry, does that sound rude?
I agree with you. That's something that I'm seeing, like the little comments in
there. It's just like, and I think for them, we're standing up for, and I'm like, well, really, if push comes to shove, when you're in the workplace, most of the worst experiences that I have is with fellow blacks in the workplace. And that's both men and women. But it would be, where I have worked where there are black men there, is either we really, really get along, but a good proportion of the time, we don't. It's like almost he goes out of his way to show that I don't want us to get along too much because I don't want people to think like we're forming some kind of
clique.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And then it becomes that kind of game of disrespect. Yeah, so that was
Fair
kind
enough.
of, you know.
And it's just like on that, before we get back, I guess, towards the womanhood and stuff, what do you feel we can do as a people to stop that?
I think we need to tell our children better stories about our culture. I think the issue is single parentness in the black community. We can't ignore that issue, and that almost creates from childhood an antagonism between men and women, black men and black women. And I see that in my own home because I have a brother, and again my brother lived by a different rule to the sisters, and again it was that as women you do this, you are the carer but you're not the cared for. The male is the cared for, and that creates a strange dynamic between black men and black women. I also think that wider society does it as well. And we buy into a lot of the narratives that wider society sells us. It's rare that we would watch a film where the black man and the black woman Black Panthers came out, and here we found black relationships looking harmonious, a little bit more harmonious than what we're used to seeing. But in general, we see this constant antagonism between black men and black women, and I think that that's part of our colonial heritage as well, which we can't ignore. For me, to overcome that, we need to, from a young age, teach our children an alternative narrative that actually pre this, we were a collective, we were a community, we got along with each other, we loved and we cared and we respected each other, and here's what this image looks like. Not only tell them the narrative but also model it. I think we'll see some changes in my generation, but it's with the generations that are coming
Where you
up.
always try and hit the ones coming up because they're the ones that can make the difference.
Yeah.
And I guess I always say it's best we know our history. So you say pre-colonialism, we should know our history, but also post. So I find it shocking how many people don't know the UK history.
No.
Of us in the country, and it's really sad. But I understand why you don't understand it because you're not taught, and you're not taught to search for it either.
Yeah.
So.
And as black people, it's almost, we don't want to search for it. Anytime when that's brought up, it's like, oh, that was in the past. But it's almost on the 11th of the 11th, we have our 2-minute silence, and we allow Jews to celebrate not celebrate, but recognize the trauma that occurred during the Holocaust. And almost historically, we recognize certain epochs within history. But then when it comes to our history, it's done away with, forget about it.
Yeah. I guess there's the saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and that's sort of how it's always going to be. But I guess that's the conversation. I guess that's good. That's what your blog and your podcast is also good for, sort of like raising awareness on this side of stuff, and which is good because it allows another area for people to pick up this sort of knowledge where they wouldn't pick it up before. But with it, you've been doing it for 2 years. You've been growing it. You've been speaking to other women, other men about some of the issues. Have you been able to do like collabs and stuff in the past, or are you looking to that going forward?
I'm definitely looking to it going forward. And with the podcast, it is sort of a collaboration with whoever really that I have in my community. So one of the first ladies, I think on episode 1 through to 3, Nadia Anderson, she started to work at the college with me. We were both teaching sociology together, and that was maybe going back, I want to say maybe 8 years ago, and we've remained friends. And she's recently published. She's very much part of the community. She wants to grow knowledge and awareness in the community. So that's where the podcast kind of thing started off with me and her. But in general, up and coming episodes, we've got lots of people joining us. Hopefully we'll be doing a podcast about mental health in the Black community, and that's going to incorporate some people from my church who work in mental health, psychologists, so on and so forth. So the podcast itself, the platform itself, is for collaborative purposes. It's not for me to sit there and
dictate,
basically. So you're going to hear many different voices on there, hopefully your own at some point. On there, because one thing we definitely want to hear from Black men. We want to hear from you guys, and we're desperate to hear from you guys. So
now that there's collaborative approach, what's next?
For Diamond Box Project, we are hoping to take the spin-off podcast live. So we're hoping, possibly not by the end of the year, but early next year, to do a live event and record that.
Okay, cool.
So including all of the guests that we featured on the podcast up to that point, live audience, open panel, questions, that type of stuff, just stimulating debate, allowing people to connect with each other, and allowing collaboration and so on and so forth, and just see where that takes us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we are kind of doing, I know I shouldn't say this, I should be saying, we've put this in place and that in place, but what's happening with this project is it's evolving organically, and I'm just moving with it, really.
Oh, that's good, though. That's good, though. Well, you know what, I wish you the best with that.
Thank you.
What would be the dream scenario for you? If I give you the dream scenario for the end of this project, what would it be? Dream
scenario would be that people who engage in the project would be inspired to go and start their own projects.
Yeah.
So it's not just about Diamond Box Project or Headscarf and Yard Clothes sitting and people being entertained by what we're discussing. It's about people thinking, oh, okay, she's just an ordinary person just like me, ordinary job, and she did this. So maybe I can do this for my community.
It's 2:35 a.m. and I can't sleep. I keep having strange visions and they are dreams. So pillow talk could fix it. I think I need a spouse. I need to stretch and get some fresh air and leave the house. I put my tracksuit on and jump in my Rover. Yeah, it's crap, but it's still a motor.